I'm Mason Mount. You're listening to the London is Blue podcast.
All right. Well, hard pivot here. So sunshine and rainbows are over. And we're going to talk more about the dark side of the match today because that was a lot of it. Even there were some really, I think coming out of post-substitution second half to about the 75th, 78th minute, we were looking good. First half, we're not looking good, right? We got bailed out by a penalty and then went on long stretches of more dross. It was not great. And a big part of that, I think a lot of people are going to look at are the center backs today. So, again, I don't know what the hell Azpilicueta was doing when it came to defending a set piece today. He just seemed distracted. Rudiger giving up the corner kick. I said this on the stream. Why? You were 7 feet from the sideline, and
that
you
was my
can't
point.
put it into a route for a throw. Just mind-boggling. And then obviously Christensen losing Mikel Antonio in the second half, on the flop and pop up and be ready thing that Dan talked about. Naz tweeting, quote from Lampard talking about his defenders. He says, "No, we were not let down by the defenders. We made mistakes in the build up to the goals, not just defenders that cost us the game." Which I can see that. There was times when we were on a counterattack and Alonso chose the worst of all the options. And then we were completely exposed on the counterattack. Grant DeSmit on Twitter saying that was a shambles. Christensen has the potential to be the best center back in the world. All he needs is to never come up against the center forward ever again. I think I'm playing the center back with clean sheets in his last three against Liverpool, Everton, Leicester, against Deeney. So, unfortunately, the problem here, gentlemen, being that I was praising Christensen in the first half. Most of the game, I thought he did well. Comes back to lapses. But here's kind of my bigger problem is that Christensen and Rudiger are never on the same page for whatever reason. And Christensen speaks really good English. Rudiger speaks pretty good English. Kepa's isn't great. How are those three communicating throughout a match? We don't have octolingual Petr Cech back there speaking German to Rudiger, Danish to Christensen. There's a disconnect between them as center pairing. I can't wait to hear Shane in Discord on this because he played center back. They don't move as a pair. And we saw that when Christensen stepped and Rudiger dropped and created this huge area of space for them to run in. And that's kind of a big problem to me. And Kepa can't communicate with them to organize it. So when Chelsea put out the unseen highlights and you can actually hear the guys yelling, Kepa, he'll yell his kind of basic commands in English. But then he's talking to Aspi a lot in Spanish. I heard that. And Alonso. So he's good on the wings, but they're not nearly as important as his relationship with his center backs. So, Dan, Danish Prince, I know you love Christensen and what he's done, and he looked really good until he didn't today. But again, center backs in general, it's been a massive weakness for Chelsea.
It was bad. This is some of the worst that we've seen this season, and it came up against a side that really is not good. This West Ham team had not scored for months. I think it was February was the last time that they had scored. So it was pre-restart. They couldn't buy a goal except against Chelsea and our defense. I think as much there are plenty of individual mistakes. It just is clearly endemic now of a scenario where I really believe that Zuma is our best B option center back on this team to pair with a future center back partner of some capacity who is better than what we have currently. Zuma's better aerially than any of our other center backs. I'm not that much caring about his passes because no one is getting the separation against teams like this to allow our center backs to actually pass super deep. So every time Christensen or Rudiger were trying some of the long balls today, interceptions were extremely, extremely high. I think, though, the most individually frustrating, because I just have to say it, the Rudiger mistake was basically like giving away a penalty in the box. With
Again, the
how
third goal?
bad? No, the first one.
Yeah.
Yeah, giving away a corner, giving away any set piece, and like this, you just saw how upset Tammy was when he kind of like when we ultimately like gave up a set piece. The team is aware. The team knows that this is the Achilles heel. It is very evident to the players. It's evident to the coaching staff. And Nick, I think the frustrating thing is it was as bad as giving up a penalty without getting a red card.
Yeah, I mean, West Ham in their last 4 matches, I believe the statistic was 0 goals and 7 shots on target. Maybe I'm a little off there. They had 4 shots on target and 3 goals today against us. Like, think about that. This team is terrible. Like, they're really bad. If you watch them play Wolves, like, Wolves completely dominated them, snuffed them out. It wasn't even a contest. Like, it looked like a championship team that was bound for the championship again. Like, Chelsea were so open, so careless with the ball. I think to Brandon's point, you know how a center back pairing, like when I feel confident in a center back pairing, is when they're yelling at each other for a mistake by one or the other. They weren't talking. They weren't talking at all. It was mind blowing. And then when they would pass the ball to each other, there was such uneasiness about receiving it and pivoting the ball. It was just like, what? You guys have played together all year. Like, what's going on? Like, how is it possible against one guy who's disconnected from the rest of the team? There was 30, 40 yards between Antonio and the rest of the fucking team. How is it possible that you guys are being bullied by this one guy? And of course, he had a great game. We always seem to struggle with him. He's full of pace and power, and he's, occasionally will score a goal.
He's
right?
the best. He's the best isolated forward in the league by a mile. He relishes off not having the ball, and I've never seen anyone like that. It's uncanny.
But Rudiger is supposed to be a leader, right? It's a trademark of, like, he's clearly a leader. Like, we've seen him lead before. This is not like an aberration. I'm not calling him out for being some sort of faux leader. But, man, being a leader is hard. And it did not look like he was putting in that extra leadership work today. And the whole thing was off from the beginning, Dan. I don't know how else to explain it. I just felt terrible about it.
I think we need to, because there was a question asked in our Discord chat about, like, who are the leaders on this team. I think we need to get away from this idea that gesticulation and frustration being externalized is a sign of leadership. But there were some tough moments in this match, and what wasn't happening was someone wasn't taking charge of the situation. I'd say just by action and behavior, the only 2 people I would consider leaders on the pitch today were Christian and were Willian. Those are the only 2 players I would consider leaders through action in what they did today. Even our captain Dave, who has done brilliant work throughout the past couple games here, was fatigued. I think mentally fatigued. I think this team is mentally fatigued. Brandon is how I feel about it. Watching the way that we responded to kind of getting gut punched a couple times today.
So, Nick, you said it multiple times. This team looks like a step behind. Here's a fact. West Ham last played a week ago Tuesday. They had 8 days between matches. Chelsea played Sunday, had 3 days between matches. That is a fact, okay? We didn't really talk about it because we were so wrapped up in the, all right, next game. All right, next game. We didn't, and even in our preview, we kind of talked about the day been off. That was massive. So here's the other point. Tough shit. You want to be a top team in Europe, compete across multiple competitions. This is why Frank is going and signing more players, because this team clearly does not have the depth to challenge on multiple fronts. And we've seen that.
I mean, I think Frank has to, take part of the blame today too, though, right? Like, and I say that just from a selection standpoint. Christian, coming off of, a minor injury, just played a full 90 minutes at full throttle, right? N'Golo Kante, after being hurt all year, has played 4 matches in a row, full throttle. Willian, same. Mason Mount, been Iron Man all year. Got one half of football off, essentially, in the last 2 matches. Like, some of it is, of course, there's underperformance in a squad, which leads to Frank having to trust a more limited pool of players. But, like, I think when you look at the, we don't see training, which is obviously our caveat every time we talk about the selection nightmare that he's probably going through. It just makes you wonder for some of these matches if we can stagger some of these guys a little bit more. Of course, I don't know the answer to that. I'm not going to pretend to be the manager or whatever. But it just strikes me as odd that if we know that we're mentally fatigued, and I was one calling for Dave to start again because I thought Reece was poor against Leicester.
Yeah.
Then, I guess I'm wrong, right? And I don't know how else to
look. We've struggled with the lineup predictions because of the quick turnaround on these, and a big part of it is we praised Frank for making the right changes on Sunday.
Yeah,
but it was wrong from the beginning. Do you praise Frank again today? It was wrong from the beginning, but his changes were positive. I mean, comparatively speaking. Fatigue is definitely an issue. He has to manage it, and it's hard to fault him because some of the mistakes that were made today were probably from mental fatigue. Normally, those guys wouldn't make such dumb mistakes, but they did. And West Ham, to be fair, they were predictably West Ham. They didn't surprise me at all. Maybe a little bit that they pressed in the beginning. Other than that, that was exactly what I expected from West Ham. And we got what we wanted.